Joining me from London is Brendan O'Neill of Spike, the online magazine. Brendan, wonderful as always to see you. Thanks so much. But why have the judges done this?
It's hard to overstate how serious this is and how problematic this decision is, because this is an explicitly political decision. This is the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, making a political call, siding with the Remainer elite. This case was brought by fanatical, rich Remainers, and facilitating a situation where the Remainer Parliament, the vast majority of MPs are pro-Remain and anti-Brexit, where the Remainer Parliament can get back together and continue its stitching up of our vote to leave the European Union. So the Supreme Court has made itself a weapon of one side in the political sphere. That is really, really dangerous. The situation we have now in this country is that we have a public who voted for Brexit, but we have a totally Remainer establishment. We have a Remainer Parliament, we have a Remainer civil service, we have a Remainer business elite, and now it looks like we have a Remainer judiciary as well. That's what we're up against. We're up against an establishment which is hell-bent on ensuring that our vote to leave the European Union doesn't happen.
But when the judges go 11-zip, say, look, you know, that's unlawful, bring back Parliament, it's got to do its duties, does that suggest that, well, they were simply following the law and it's pretty clear?
I think the real problem, there were two stages to this judgment. The first was their ruling on whether it was justiciable to make a ruling on this at all, or whether it should be left to the political sphere. And they said, of course, yes, it is justiciable, we will make a ruling. And then they ruled against Boris. I think the real problem was with the first part of that. I think things like this, the problem of prorogation, as some people see it, the difficulties that exist in Parliament, unquestionable difficulties, all of these things are best left to the political sphere. There should be a democratic discussion. Parliamentarians could have called a vote of no confidence in Boris if they wanted to. They could have pushed for a general election, but they're opposed to doing that. There are so many political democratic means through which they could have challenged Boris's proroguing if that's what they wanted to do. But instead, what they've done is ridden on the coattails of the extremely wealthy Remainer businesswoman Gina Miller, who brought this case, and they've now created an unprecedented situation in this country where the Supreme Court is ruling on what the government may and may not do. That sets a really dangerous precedent for the future. It means no government in the future can really be confident that its relations with Parliament or the decisions it makes or the treaties it draws up will hold. Everything like that could now potentially be struck down by these unelected judges.
And I should point out a lower court did, in fact, so decide that this was for politicians to sort out, not for unelected judges. How bad is this for Boris Johnson as leadership? I mean, there's you having this view, I've got my view here, but of course there seems to be now a growing sort of anti-Boris media establishment as well. Is this going to be sort of a crown of thorns, or will he survive pretty much intact as, you know, the upholder of the public will against the elites?
Well, that's the fundamental question right now, is whether he will be destroyed by this or potentially benefit from it. I think if he were to play his cards right, he could very well present himself as a man of the people, despite coming from Eton and a posh background. He could present himself as someone who's on the side of the electorate, the 17.4 million of us who voted to leave the EU, against an establishment which has made it clear again and again and again that they don't want Brexit to happen. So he really needs to think carefully about how he comes out fighting. I would encourage him to be pretty confident and to be pretty confrontational, and to make clear that the reason Parliament wanted to get back together was not to really think through laws and legislation and how the country should be governed, but really just to carry on thwarting the democratic will to leave the European Union. If he were to make those kind of arguments, I think he could really be on a good footing with the public.
And I was very intrigued to see a snap poll in one of your papers, I think it was The Independent, come out saying that while most people in this snap poll, so far as I understood the legal process, supported what the court had said, 60% said, now, look, get on with getting out of the EU. So I think Boris Johnson would romp it in at the next election. But here's the thing. Where does this go, Brendan? Because Parliament now has to vote 60, or two-thirds of Parliament has to support Johnson if he wants to call an early election, and Labor's saying, you can't do it. They're running away from it. So how's this going to sort out?
That's the really shocking thing in all of this. We have MPs who are looking to judges to make certain decisions and using their own power in Parliament to try and stitch up Brexit and to try and make sure we cannot have a no-deal Brexit, we cannot have a real Brexit, is what that really means. They're doing all of this stuff behind closed doors or in their own little circles, and they are constantly shutting out the people. So they voted twice against having a general election, and many of them are openly saying that we can't have a general election until we have made it impossible to have a particular form of Brexit and until we have secured an extension of Britain's membership of the EU until at least January next year. So what this means is that they are basically saying we have to take certain options off the table before we go to the rabble, before we go to the plebs, before we go to the people, because they will vote for things that we disapprove of and vote for things we disagree with. So they're basically stitching politics up and keeping the peoples at arm's length for as long as possible. And I think that really captures how anti-democratic parliamentarians are at this moment.
It's extraordinary. A leader who wants to do what the public have voted for and consistently said for 3 years they want is blocked from doing that. And when he wants to go to the people to actually get their nod on whether he should keep going, is blocked from doing that too. It is just such a classic. But, you know, I'm just wondering, looking at the big picture then, Brendan, I mean, what is going to happen now? I mean, how can this be resolved? It's like a ship becalmed.
It's really difficult to resolve. And I think, you know, people talk about the Brexit crisis or Brexit chaos or, you know, the problem of Brexit. Brexit's not the problem. The problem is very, very simple. The problem is we have a country in which the people want one thing and the establishment wants another. And that's where every single aspect of this tension and this conflict and this crisis springs from. It springs from the fact that the distance between public opinion and political elite opinion has never been so wide. They do not understand us, they do not like us, they do not respect us, and they will do everything they can to prevent us from getting the thing that we want, which is to leave the European Union. So that's what this boils down to. The reason Britain is in a crisis at the moment is very straightforwardly because the establishment is refusing to obey the people's instructions like they said they would. They said they would enact the referendum result. The general election manifestos of 2017 said the same, and now they're turning their backs on all of that.
But where it's going to go, heaven knows. I have no idea. Boris Johnson has got to somehow get himself to an election in reasonably OK shape, and then he'll win it. But it's just getting that election is going to be, well, how do you do that? Looking over, there's such commonalities now, Brendan. I'm talking to you, obviously, just as the Democrats are threatening to try to get rid of Donald Trump, also without an election, by impeaching him. What is the commonality here? What are we seeing? Is there a sickness in the West? Is it just happenstance that the same thing is happening in Britain as it is in America?
I think the commonalities are really, really important. And I think the fact that they're both happening on the same day is extraordinary and really revealing, because what we have are, you know, the old establishment, the kind of PC elites, the liberal elites who've run things for quite a long time, are absolutely reeling from the votes of 2016, the vote for Brexit and the vote for Trump. They cannot believe the people disobeyed them. They cannot believe the people made these populist choices, as they are referred to, and now they will do everything they can to try and stop those things from happening or to get Trump out of the White House. What's the situation is, these people, having lost in the court of public opinion, are now trying to win either in the Supreme Court in the UK or via a trial in the Senate in the US. It's so cynical. It's so fundamentally anti-democratic. My hope and my belief is that it will boost people's desire to have Brexit, and it will boost people's support for Trump, because what ordinary people will realise is that the establishment doesn't listen to them. It doesn't pay attention to them. It's not interested in what they have to say. And I think that will really reinvigorate the populist sentiment and make people determined to get the thing that they want to get.
Yeah, what disheartens me is that journalists as a class, I mean, obviously there's lots of exceptions, people are looking at two of them now, but journalists as a class have thrown in their lot with the elites and have been spruiking them against the people. I don't know when we became part of the aristocracy, but there it is. Brendan O'Neill, thank you so much indeed for your terrific analysis. See you later.